everyone and welcome back to my channel. I just want to show you some knitting that I've done. I'm making a bag, and this is the this will be the back of the bag. So it's like stocking stitch and then some knit stitch there. And and today I'll be making the front of the bag, and also I'm making the what do you call it? My brain's gone. You know, the flap, the front flap. Yeah, and yeah, it's not perfect. I'm pleased. Yeah, I mean it's not perfect. There will be some in it. I think the other side does have a hole or two in it, but we'll ignore that. After all, it shows it's handmade, you know. Handmade is never perfect, otherwise it'd be done by a machine. So I'm trying not to get too caught up on tiny imperfections. It's inevitable when you're doing a large piece of work. Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's, you know, it's handmade. Handmade stuff is never perfect. That's what I try and tell myself. In Morocco, by the way, I found out recently that their rugs made in Morocco always have an imperfection in them, just to show you they're handmade. And you know, yeah, that's what I try and tell myself. But yeah, generally speaking, there's only a few. I only missed a few stitches, I think. It's good. It's looking good. So I'm hoping that yeah, when it's pieced together, it'll look really nice, and I'll show you the finished result when it's all done. So that's something fun that I've been doing recently. So yeah, in this video, I had an idea that I wanted to. I might well have done this in the past actually, because I've done so many videos, but it doesn't harm to rehash things I might have already talked about, particularly as you may not have seen some of my earlier videos that I probably lost way in the mists of time. But I just thought it'd be fun, as this channel is mainly about autism and my experiences of. Obviously, I'm way more than my autism. Autism is just one facet of who I am, as I often talk about. But obviously, you know, I do have it. I am diagnosed autistic. That's a part of who I am, and I just thought you might find it interesting if I talked about, if I talked about what aspects of autism I experience, because every autistic person is different. That's why that's why I call my channel Autism's Individual, because obviously every autistic person is different. Just because they share a diagnosis, it doesn't mean that they're going to have all of the traits, all of the symptoms. So I just thought, yeah, I'll just talk about what parts of autism affect me, historically and present. So, historically, when I was a child, that is, growing up, and when I was exposed to social situations, when I had to be in social situations, obviously now that I don't have to anymore, so that part of autism is less evident simply because I don't put myself in those sorts of social situations that I used to be forced to endure. Yeah, when I was a child, I guess the most apparent part of my autism was social interaction difficulties with my peer group primarily, because it wasn't so obvious when I was with adults or when I was with children. When I was a kid, obviously, when I was with children who were a lot younger than me, then the social difficulties weren't so apparent. The social difficulties were most apparent with my peer group, and that's where I had most obvious. That's where my autism was most obvious, I guess, as a child. Obviously, at the time, I didn't have a diagnosis because I didn't get diagnosed till I was 21, but nevertheless teachers were aware of these problems, but they didn't know what to call them, so they just told my parents that I wasn't interacting properly with the rest of the class, that I wasn't integrating basically, and that maybe it would help if my mum spent more time with other parents, and that would somehow help me to relate to my peer group. I don't know how that's supposed to work. My mum didn't actually like that advice. I remember her saying later on that she didn't like it because it implies, that it's a parenting issue. Oh, just spend more time with, other parents, and maybe there won't be these interaction problems. Yes, at nursery school, the main presenting feature was that I was incredibly hyperactive, and I spent time just bouncing around on the bean cushions, not listening to the story. In actual fact, I do actually remember this a little bit, because I was put on the teacher's lap because I was wanting to bounce on the bean bags, but obviously we were supposed to be listening to a story. I didn't really want to be listening to the story because I wanted to be bouncing on the bean bags, which was much more fun and enjoyable. I didn't really want to be listening to the story, so the teacher, because I was annoying the other kids basically, the teacher put me on her lap. I do remember sitting on her lap, holding me tightly because I didn't actually want to be listening to the story. And yes, and apparently my parents were called in quite often that I was disruptive because I didn't sit still during story time. That's what they were told. So that was the main presenting feature at nurse school, was that I was disruptive. I didn't sit still at story time, and I disrupted the other children. So that would have been when I was about 3 years old. And also that my motor skills were slow to develop compared to other children my age. That self-help skills were slower to develop, so I was slow to learn how to dress myself, and tie my shoelaces took a lot longer than normal. So self-help skills and jigsaw puzzles. Now there's this stereotype autistics meant to be really good at jigsaw puzzles. Sure, some are. I was really crap at jigsaw puzzles because I've got really bad spatial awareness difficulties. Well, I certainly did when I was a kid. Obviously I have developed, so I don't think I'm quite as bad as what it used to be, but as a kid I had really bad spatial awareness difficulties, and jigsaw puzzles, even the really basic ones aimed at kids my age, like those really basic ones, like really little children are given, I didn't know how to use, and I also, the health visitor said when I was 18 months old, my mum did tell me that basically I was impaired on one of the motor skill tasks where you have to build when like a health visitor, like little children checks, when they have to build like a tower or something, and and I couldn't do what was appropriate for the age. Motor skill delays in some areas, not in all, but in some areas, mainly the sort of fine motor skill development was delayed. That's where the issues were. Not so much gross motor, although I've never learned how to swim because I couldn't coordinate my limbs properly. But yeah, it was mainly fine motor and anything involving spatial skills that I struggled with, or that I was delayed with. So getting dressed, that sort of thing. So motor skills, social interaction, mentioned that. To go with the main issues, and also of course that I know number sense, although that's not directly connected to autism, but is more down to the fact I had learning difficulties around maths. Extreme though, we're not just talking about many people struggle with maths or don't like maths. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about complete and utter number blindness, where I didn't have a sense of quantity or shapes or that sort of thing. So my mum was told to go to the early learning centre and get me more books about numbers and stuff, because I didn't have a basic understanding that children just normally have, I guess, like naturally. And obviously if you don't have that basic understanding, it's very difficult to teach maths. If you don't really naturally understand quantity or space and things like that, it's very difficult to teach maths. The other main feature, I guess you could say, or trait of autism that I had, was that I learnt to read very young. When I say very young, I mean I'd learnt to read before I started school. I mean, learning how to read itself, the mechanics of reading came fairly easily to me. And I could read very, very fast, by the way. When I remember actually showing off about this when I was about 6 years old, I read a book in class, and I actually read it at a rate of knots, really, really, really fast. So fast, look how fast I could read, while all the other children were still reading fairly slowly. I could pick up a book and read it so fast. And based upon my actual ability to read, I should have been reading way above me, because I could read really long words. I could read off a page. If I were to read it, I could read really fast. But the problem is that I didn't actually I didn't understand at all what I was reading. So when I was asked about what was happening in the story, what was happening in the plot, what the characters were feeling, what the characters were thinking, what was going to happen next, why this had happened, what had led to this, all that sort of comprehension stuff, you are tested on at school and stuff, I couldn't answer those questions, and I either couldn't answer them at all, or it took me a really, really, really long time to answer them, and then I'd often get them wrong anyway. So basically, comprehension-wise, I was several years below what I should be, but reading age-wise, I was at least 5 years ahead. So because of that, I was kept on level 1 for reading. Normally you would be kept back on level 1 if you actually couldn't read or really struggled with reading. So based upon the fact I could read really well, I should have been way ahead. But because of the comprehension problem, I could read but without comprehension, I was kept on level 1 reading, which my mum said was really frustrating for both her and me, because I could read so fast. These were really basic books, but because I didn't have the comprehension, I was kept back, basically. So yeah, that was the other feature. Also, okay, I'm going to move over to video number 2. This, in actual fact, I may well have to do several videos in this. I might well have done these videos before, but I just thought I'd talk about them again, because you might not have seen the other videos, and I don't think I've talked about this for a long time. So moving on to video number 2.